everybody. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Welcome.
How are you, Chris?
I'm doing really well.
You're doing well?
Yeah, how about you?
I am fantastic. It is the first Sunday in May. Not sure how that already happened.
I have no idea how that happened.
I am blown
Spring's
away.
here.
It is.
Thank goodness.
It is happening.
Yeah.
I have tulips blooming, so I am
Let's
pumped.
go.
So, Chris, what's going on with the series? New
Yeah.
series this week.
Yeah, first week measure of success. Craig is bringing a really impactful word. I really believe this is important because so many of us say success is,
Right?
and we live according to this weird equation of if this happens by this time, then I'll be
Then I'm good.
successful.
Right.
But what if that's not the measure of success? Today, Craig is going to unpack really what that is in the eyes of the kingdom, which I'm excited about. So
That'll be
yeah, what
awesome.
else?
That'll be awesome. We got communion
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So we're thrilled you're with us online. So if you were at home, grab some
For sure.
supplies so you can participate with us. As we're in the room participating in communion, we would love for you to be at home,
Yeah.
doing whatever that looks like for you. So we are thrilled you're here. We've got a
Absolutely.
great day ahead. And hey, we are going to be back after service, right?
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll see you in about an hour.
That's
So,
exactly
enjoy.
right. Enjoy, guys.
See ya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shauna. I'm one of the teaching pastors here, and welcome to our first week of the Measure of Success. Success can be measured in many ways. College degrees, salary, relationships, health. I mean, the list can go on and on. Well, I have another way. The number 5, as in 5 kilometers. And to help me explain what that means, I have my friend Danielle Green here with me to tell us more about it.
Thank you, Shauna. Since 2003, Kensington has partnered with Pokot Outreach Ministries, otherwise known as POM, to reach the Pokot people of Western Kenya. One of the ways we serve the Pokot people is to help provide clean drinking water through our Hope Water Project ministry. And that brings us to the 5 kilometers Shauna was talking about.
All right, Danielle, I think you can take it from here. I'm gonna go start training for this 5K.
Good luck! Coming up on June 3rd, we're hosting our 9th annual 5K and Fun Run. This is for everyone of all ages. Whether you're an avid runner running a sub 5-minute mile, or just someone who'd like to have some fresh air and enjoy hanging out with some really cool people. This is a great way to support the beautiful people in Western Kenya from thousands of miles away.
Whew. All right. Okay, well, I think I'm ready now. But training aside, this really is an incredible opportunity that we have to make a huge difference in people's lives.
There are estimated to be over 1 million Pokot living in some of the harshest conditions on Earth, but we consider them to be family. And over the past 13 years, more than 135 wells have been installed. With each one, villages have grown, lives have been saved, communities have been formed, and thousands of people have heard the gospel for the very first time.
Which is absolutely incredible. And having just been with the Pokot a few months ago, I witnessed firsthand the impact of clean drinking water. But I also saw how there's still so much more to be done. So grab your phones, put it on your calendar, lace up your favorite pair of running shoes, and join us on June 3rd. You can register by going to kensingtonchurch.org/HWP. And I gotta tell you, I look forward to the Hope Water Project 5K every year. And something else, though, that I'm really excited about is our upcoming women's retreat. Are you gonna be there?
I wouldn't miss it.
Cool, I'm also gonna be there. So women, whether you are young, single, married, an empty nester, seasoned, or somewhere in between, we invite you to join us for a few days away. It'll be a time to connect with other women, to adventure together, to discover beauty, to experience joy, and to grow in your faith journey. All women are invited to join us for our retreat on May 19th through the 21st at Spring Hill Camps. And men, we would love for you to invite the women in your life to come be a part of this incredible weekend experience. It's going to be an amazing few days where we will embrace rest, implore grace, and inspire love. We can't wait to see you and gather together as women at this year's retreat.
Good morning, church. Would you stand as we worship this morning? There's just some great opportunities to jump into, but we'll just get started in worship this morning. Would you sing, It's Time? It's time for the sleeper to wake. It's time for the old winds to change. I hear the Spirit say it's time. It's time for the dead man to rise. It's time for the great light to shine. I hear the Spirit say it's time. Fling wide you heavenly gates. Let the King of Glory in. Let the King of Glory in.
Awesome job. Hey, good morning. Hey, before you sit down, really quickly, will you do me a favor, even if you've never been here before, this is your first time, turn to somebody near you, say good morning, and I just want you to ask this one question. You don't even have to answer it, just pose it. Why do we sing? That's it. Why do we sing? Go ahead. So during that song, I just took a minute to let you know, I don't know if you do this. This is one of the things I do sometimes when we sing, is take a minute before you just go into the motions of singing at church on a Sunday and actually listen for at least a minute to the lyrics and then ask God to let that be more than just a go through the motions song, but let the words actually be a request. And so that was my request this morning for me, for you, for us, for this place, whether you're in the building, whether you're watching in another building, is that there really would be a sense of God's light that comes in, that we would feel it. Even if you're not sure who God is yet, that there would be a sense of him drawing near to you this morning and being present to you. And I just hope as we go through those moments together and we sing, and we've got more at the end of the day, and we're gonna have communion together this morning, that our songs, our moments of worship would be more than just singing. There are places in the scriptures that tell us that God inhabits the praises of his people. That there is just a reality that when our words are speaking truth about who Jesus is, it creates an internal posture that I think opens us up more to be receptive to what it is that God has for us and who it is that he even is in his person and character. So that's why we sing. All right, a couple things to let you know about this morning. If you didn't read your email, we've got some big news for you that we're gonna let you know. Last week, if you were here or if you watched online or involved with us, you know that we culminated a long search for the next senior pastor of Kensington into a vote of affirmation that took place last week. So come and give me a drum roll, everybody. Do your best drum roll. You ready? You're like, we already read the email, dude. And he said yes, he's coming, and we said yes to the tune of 99% affirmation. So if you've been on this journey with us, you know a year ago that was not the result we had. So we called him up on Monday and we're like, okay, we said yes, you better say yes, because we got a team of people that are on their way to Connecticut. If not, we're dragging you here. So Brian and his family are thrilled. We're thrilled. And this really is a moment where we're finally able to say we are shutting the door on the process, but we are opening the door on the future. So here we go. A couple things just about happenings around the campus to let you know. First of which is we have an awesome opportunity right now to jump in and serve in our K-Kids team. That's all of our young kids that are in the back on Sunday morning being loved on and led to have experiences just like us. It is not babysitting. It's not just watching your kids. It's not just keeping them out of your hair. It is time where they are being introduced in the same way we're trying to do together to who Jesus is and what he has for them. This is always an interesting time of year. Our numbers are going up, if you haven't noticed lately, more and more in here, which means also in there. We are at increasing record levels of kids, but this is a time of year when our volunteer levels start going down. We have Mother's Day coming up, Father's Day coming up, nice weather, we have summer coming around the corner. All of that as it happens this time of year, it never fails. Our volunteers begin to go down because people are in and out of town and they're just doing other things. So we have an awesome opportunity right now for you to jump in and be involved in our K-Kids team. And it doesn't, maybe it's not even a permanent thing for you at the moment, but it could be an opportunity for you to kind of toe in the water, see what it's like, and just be a part of what I think is one of the best teams around here. This is a team. If you want to have your life matter for something that's going to shape the future, that's the place to be a part of. I mean, we're literally talking about our kids who are the future now and will continue to be the future, taking that baton from us. Last week, if you were here for the baptisms, there were a couple of our students and kids that got in these waters, and one, it's a moment I'll just keep between the two of us because she kept it between us. But it's a 12-year-old little girl who, when she got in, she pulled out a card, a piece of paper, and said, can I read this? And I thought, well, maybe, do you want to, her dad and I both kind of, do you want a mic? Do you want to read it? You can. And she said, no, can I just read it to you? and the things that she shared that she's struggling with as a 12-year-old, and the way that Jesus is meeting her, afterwards, I just looked her in the eyes and I said, do you have any idea yet that you will be the generation and you will be the person that God uses to change everything that statistics are saying are going wrong with your generation? And you have an incredible opportunity. From our kids to our teens, you want to shape the future, you shape them. So I would love you, do me this favor right now. Even if after you do the picture, you just ignore me and you go at whatever and delete it. Put your phone up on the screen, take a picture of the QR code, click the link, and here you might go, okay, I'm gonna delete it as soon as, okay, fine, go ahead and delete it, do whatever you want. But I'm gonna ask you to at least get it on your phone so you have no excuse after this moment to go, oh, I forgot what the QR code was. I forgot what the link was. Now you've got the link, it's on your phone. At least take a look at it. Again, awesome opportunity right now, and we could really use you at this point in the year as well. So along with that, our high school and junior high ministry today has a parent meeting. That's gonna happen after the second service, a couple minutes after it ends, room 1300, right over here around the corner. This is gonna be kind of talking about the next year, things that are coming up. Jesse Allen, Lizbeth, who both lead that ministry, are gonna be in there kind of sharing with parents what we're doing, things to anticipate, some of the new strategies we're employing, and just how it is that we're trying to really shape and invest in kind of that next bracket of our kids when it gets into the teens. I'm gonna be there. I've got 2 kids that are in that group. That group has had an immense impact on their lives. My daughters have found friends and community there. So true story, like a little bit of a reveal moment for the McGlasson household. When we came here to Orion, it was a long process of multiple changes, from leaving the church they'd grown up in to go to Clinton Township, our other campus on the east side, to then come here. So when we came here, I brought them in, we stood over there against the wall, and that's where I told them, nobody was here, it was a Sunday back when COVID was happening, so we couldn't even meet on Sundays. Stood them against that wall and told them what was going on, and I anticipated, Dad, this is exciting. And they looked at me and they started sobbing and they said, we're not coming. I was like, well, you're not driving yet either, so yes, you are. So, but for them, it was just they had no friends, they had no community, and other places were that community. I tell you that only to tell you this. I couldn't drag them out of this place now. And it's largely because of what's happened in student ministries and the way that they've found friends and community and people that are really helping push them continually towards Jesus. So if you've got kids, even if they're not in our group, teens, junior high, high school, I'd encourage you to come, even if you have to come back after second service, and just hear the heart of what it is that we're trying to do and how we're doing it. All right. So this one is a little bit heavier. We have a part of our family here, a guy named Drew Smogger, who has been, picture up on the screen, maybe you'll recognize him. He has been one of the most, in many ways, behind the scenes, but faithful servants of this community for years and years. Matter of fact, if you've ever had a cup of coffee here, Drew brewed it. Every Sunday, Drew comes in early. He's probably one of the first people here. Every Sunday when I walk through these doors, Drew is downstairs in the cafe brewing coffee. Every single Sunday without fail. He serves in K-Kids. He's helped out with multiple projects around the campus for years and in the community. Just one of those kind of people whose life has been shaped by Jesus to give his life away to other people. And this last week, we found out that unexpectedly and suddenly on Friday, Drew lost his life. And he is a huge loss to our community. And many of you probably knew him. Many of you probably did not. But if you've ever enjoyed that cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, you're like, it's not Starbucks, but if you've enjoyed it, Drew. We actually called it brewing, or drewing, because he did it so faithful. But Drew was the one that was a part of making that happen and so many other things. So just wanted you to know about that. It's a big loss for our community. It's a loss, obviously, for his family. And we're going to be in prayer for him. And as details we find out, we'll probably put some details on Facebook just so we can love on his family and support them in this time. With that said, I think it's actually interesting, the topic of this morning and the series that we're launching today, The Measure of Success. The next couple of weeks, what we really want to lean into is, what does God have to say about success? Particularly for us as North Americans, whose lives are driven so much by ideas of success, and yet such a wide and vast array of how to define that and understand it. I think by the time we're done with the series, my hope is that we will realize that a life lived much more like Drew's than I think so often our tendency is, which is to be more self-absorbed, is much more the idea of God's success than we have created for ourselves. So what we did do, though, is to try and understand a little bit better what success is, how we define it, and how we frame it, is we sent our very own Sam Anderson down into the streets of Detroit. We're on Campus Martius with a microphone and a camera. Yeah, let's just say this. There were a lot of edits and a lot of things that didn't make the video. But as he talked with people, here's what made the cut.
Hey, Kensington, Sam Anderson. We're going to connect with some people here on the street. We're at Campus Martius in Detroit. We're going to talk about success. How does our culture define success? How do you define success? Are you, in fact, successful? So let's go. Let's talk to some people. How would you say our culture defines success?
By the media.
By the media?
You know, social media.
Yeah.
Having a culture, a positive culture, having a positive mindset, having people around you, really just have it. Well, we gotta cut.
Huh?
We gotta cut.
Why we gotta cut? You're right on it, man. No.
There needs to be something fulfilled. So there's a goal, and then that gets completed.
Money, I guess, maybe.
Money?
Yeah.
But I really do think that having a lot of people with different backgrounds and different perspective on life and just all different backgrounds really come together to do one thing is what it's all about. You know,
Fast living, sports cars. You know, the living a life like a rock star.
Accomplishments and materialistic things, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I would say status.
Status?
Yes.
Okay, what do you mean by status?
How far you get, maybe it'd be degrees or within a workplace, like titles.
Okay, how would you define success?
Not having to think about money.
Okay, like you have so much of it?
No. Just like, you know, like I don't have to worry about like either like rent or mortgage or any of that kind of stuff, and just like, I don't know, just like less stress, less worry.
I'm working hard.
Okay.
Grinding.
So I define success, there's a number of things. It could be financially. Obviously, money is always a good thing to have.
Yeah.
But just setting goals through life and hitting those goals.
For me, it's impact.
Okay.
And the things that I'm doing, how they impact the community that I live in.
Yeah.
And how, you know, the people around me perceive me.
Family.
Okay.
Family.
I like that.
Family.
Family support. Being supported by the family.
Yeah.
Actually having a firm foundation.
Yeah.
You know, being able to actually standing on your own.
Yeah.
You know, not relying on individuals.
You know, life of happiness, so whatever that might look like, whether it be experiences, sometimes it's financial, but getting to a place where it's like I want to comfortably do the things, see the things. Giving back, I would say, is a part of it too.
Would you consider yourself successful?
Yeah, I suppose.
Okay, why?
I get to do basically, I'm comfortable with what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right on. I love it. Would you guys consider yourselves successful?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Getting there.
Getting there, on the way.
Yep.
On the journey.
Yep.
Perfect. Thanks, dude.
Cool.
That's it. Appreciate you.
Yep.
So what is success? Just wonder if you had a chance to just define it in your own head for a minute. How would you define it? And just think about it, the idea of success. Obviously, you heard some of the answers that they gave, and maybe those are even some of your answers, but how would you define success? So I think in the last couple of years, particularly, the idea of success has been really shaken up. I think everything that we have gone through in the last number of years as not just a world, but even as a culture, as a country, I think has really disrupted maybe some of how we have defined success. It's put us into a place to potentially reevaluate what it is that we define as success. So a lot of work that I want to do with you today. So I want to jump in pretty quick here this morning and see what it is that God has to say about how it is that we frame and possibly even reframe the way that we understand and define what measuring success looks like for our lives. So let me pray. Father, just continue to ask that as we sang this morning, let the light in, that would continue to happen today. That there would be a clear sense, Holy Spirit, of your presence here with us this morning. Of you, the one who holds all things in the palm of your hand, who is in and over and through and under everything. God, would we just have a sense of your sustaining presence that's here with us this morning. Help us not to just go through motions today of religious church attendance, but to truly have a sense of at least a curiosity, if not a desperation in our heart for you. And I pray that you would respond to that. God, I pray that as we open up your word, especially as we dip back many, many generations earlier to a time where we could dismiss because it was so different than our time, it's your sovereign choice that allowed the record of everything that's in this book to be in it. And so I pray that you would help us then to receive what it is that you want for us to receive this morning, to know what it is you want us to know, to be disturbed and disrupted by what you want us to be disturbed and disrupted by, that you would be able to capture parts of our mind and parts of our heart that maybe we either haven't let you yet or we haven't even understood you want to yet. So God, we just thank you. I give you permission, though I don't need to, but just acknowledgement, permission that I'm just a man on the stage trying to make sense of you, and I'm a man off the stage trying to do the same. So I pray that you would help me right now. I pray that you would speak through me. Let my words be your words. Let them be in agreement with you, Jesus, and in agreement with your word. And we pray these things in your name. Amen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and receive up our offering before we do anything else this morning. And one of the things I do sometimes, I try to think through the different ways that I just want to acknowledge that these moments support so many people around us. And this week is just one of those rare weeks where I have been inundated with a list of different ways that your generosity on a Sunday morning has helped other people, needy families, planting churches, sending teams recently over to Nepal, sending a team to go to India right now to be with Jaya's family who just lost him, our first global partner. There are just so many ways, which if you don't know that ministry or you don't know the one that in all of our different global partners, there has been years and years of a history here of trying to partner with and support the work of men and women around the world that are serving Jesus, serving their communities, and it's just so many ways that your generosity enables all that to happen. So as the buckets are going around, I just want to say thank you. If you've not been a part of this with us, here's all the ways on the screen that you can join us, from the QR code, the app, to everything else. And then there's buckets and baskets that we put in the back if you'd like to do something more physical. So again, this only happens because of you, so thank you. All right, so measure of success. Quick story. I'm going to put a picture up on the screen, and then I want to tell you his story. This is a man named Haru. So Haru, when his picture comes up, was and let's keep that up for a little bit of time as I tell his story. So Haru, during World War II, was a part of a small group of Japanese soldiers that were sent to the Philippines. And part of what their mission was kind of guerrilla tactic warfare. They were hiding in the mountains and in the jungle area, and their job was, with this small fighting force that they had, is to disrupt enemy lines, to disrupt enemy camps. So they would frequently kind of sneak out, a lot of times under the mask of darkness, and they would come into places where they could attack artillery sites, where they could attack vehicles, where they could even destroy crops that were feeding some of the troops. So this was their whole job, guerrilla warfare. They were hidden, and then they would come out, they'd make their attack, and then they'd go back, small fighting unit. What happened is that when the war ended, is that they had become so good at what they did that they continued to stay in hiding. And there was an awareness that this group was still somewhere in hiding, still functioning under the belief that the world was still at war. And so there were pamphlets that would get dropped by airplanes. The war is over, come out of hiding. They thought it was propaganda. They thought it was all just a trick of the enemy, and so they just dismissed it. And then there would be other things that were dropped from airplanes, and letters that were dropped, signed by even military officials that they knew, but they would debate and they would discuss, and they would all conclude eventually, this is a trick. They're just trying to get us out. And so sadly, what ended up happening is that Haru went into active duty at age 19, entered the war, and would spend the next 30 years fighting a war that was over because he thought it was still ongoing. Until finally a small group of researchers and journalists and people that believed that they were still out there, because there was rumors, there were occasional sightings, there were still things that they were rushing, like they were still destroying crop fields and doing other things. So there was this rumor still that somebody was out there, that they were out there. So this small team of researchers and journalists and just people that wanted to see, can we find them, actually ended up finding Haru and was able to convince them that the war was in fact over, but had to bring his commanding officer so that he could see him face to face to be able to prove it 30 years later. So he went back home, and when he got back home to Japan, so much had changed that he was discouraged and felt like it wasn't the Japan he grew up in, and so he left. But after he left, he lived a little bit of time in Brazil. He started hearing stories of back home, and one story that really disrupted him was of a young man, a teenage boy, who killed his parents back in Japan. And so Haru's heart began to break for not just what made him leave, but also what he saw happening back home. And so he decided, no, I need to go back home and make a difference. So one of the things that ended up becoming of many things that he accomplished with his life after this point when he moved back home was he started a series of camps. They called them the Haru Nature Centers, that were specifically targeted and focused on helping young struggling teens get out of their struggling and become something more healthy than they were. And here's part of what I wonder when I heard his story so long ago. This is obviously on the left is when he went in, and on the right was when he came out. But one of the things that I wonder when I heard his story years ago about this man who fought a war that wasn't even happening for 30 years is how easy is it for us to also go through life and live our lives for a purpose that's meaningless? To live our lives fighting something that doesn't need to be fought, living for something that doesn't need to be lived for, and in all of it, risking the potential to give our lives for a better mission. I think about had he stayed in those woods and hid the rest of his life, how many, possibly hundreds of young men and women were served by the camps that he ended up creating that would have never been served, that would have never been loved, that would have never been helped, that would have never been brought out of some of their own struggles. What would he have missed in a greater life's purpose if he would have continued to live for something that didn't need him to live for it? If his measure of success continued to be staying his post, living for his orders, and missing, in fact, what a better measure of success would have been, which was ultimately to give his life away in an effort to serve people back in his home where he grew up. See, part of the problem with measuring success is not just that we can live lives of failure. Matter of fact, Francis Chan once said this on your screen, one of the most disruptive quotes I've ever heard. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that really don't matter. Thankfully, there are times in life, I think, that they're kind of divinely appointed experiences or times that force us into reevaluating what life is really about and whether or not our lives are living for a purpose that matters. Sometimes those are moments of loss. Those are moments of funeral. We all have it at the funeral moments where you have that moment. It's a brief moment, but we tend to have moments of reevaluation when we lose somebody. We've had, I believe, moments of reevaluation the last couple of years. We have moments of reevaluation that take place on a personal level. My wife and I, our son just moved out of the house a week and a half ago, our firstborn. It is the weirdest thing in the world to walk by his empty bedroom every night and just know he's not there. But it's forced us to kind of reevaluate. For me, it's creating two questions I haven't asked this way in a very long time. Him being gone and just being at this moment of change is making me ask, number one, what things am I not doing right now that 5 years from now I'm gonna really regret? I've had a vision to write a book for years, and I just keep pushing it off on the back burner because I've got so many other plates that I'm spinning. And I've had a moment recently where I realized I don't want to regret that 5 years from now. And part of that's being brought on by a moment of change with our son moving out of the house. It's also making me ask another question, which is, who don't I want to disappoint in my life right now? Like you, we've all got a lot of demands. Demands from our kids, demands from family, demands from work, demands from people at church. There's a lot of demands on our time, a lot of requests of our time. There's no way to meet all of them. So one of the things I'm asking right now is, with all the requests on my time, who don't I want to disappoint? Because if I'm not clear about who I don't want to disappoint, I'm probably going to disappoint everybody. And so there's just moments that I think we have this divine chance to step back and reevaluate what is the measure by which we are determining success for our lives. And I think the last couple of years of all the disruption in our world and our way of life has done that as well. Matter of fact, Forbes wrote a pretty extensive article on it. Can't read nearly all of it because it's several pages. So I have just 2 pages, and there are 2 specific lines that stuck out to me, paragraphs I want to give you. This is what the article says about how the last couple of years has really reshaped our definition and our even desire and how we define success. A few years ago, we would have said that success means earning a lot of money, having a big house, nice cars, traveling around the world, a summer home in the Hamptons, and all of the trappings and accoutrements signifying that you've made it. You go on to say in the article, but the great resignation and the trend that it has created symbolizes a new mindset. It's an evolving revolution, but the last few years has made us contemplate our lives differently. And this entails what type of person we want to become, the job or career that offers satisfaction, and looking more for a sense of purpose and meaning than merely a paycheck. I really do think if you look at the last couple of years, people we've lost, the crazy that we've lived through, the uncertainty that we've lived through, having everything taken away and the beginning to come back, it's put many of us into a place where we have done some of that reevaluating. Here's the problem, is that as everything begins to go back to quote unquote normal, is that so do we. And a lot of the normal that we're going back to isn't great. And in many ways, if we're not careful, some of what we began to more healthy redefine as success for our lives, we're just gonna go back to the old measure of success. Like, we have a moment right now that is a gift to us to really go, okay, what is success for our lives? And is it how we've previously lived? Or were the last couple of years genuinely a gift to say, hey, let's do some work to redefine a better measure for what we say this is a life worth living for? I think the last couple of years has been that gift for us. I think probably, if you think about success, there's probably one phrase that sums it up. It's kind of a universal idea. But usually when we talk about success, all right, this is gonna be an illustration Sunday. When we talk about success, we use one very common phrase. What is it? Climbing the ladder. Our lives are full of all kinds of ladders that we attempt to climb, believing that somewhere at the top of those ladders is success. And the thing is, it starts very young. It starts very early on. As a matter of fact, our earliest ladders of success, they really are merely a stool. The measure of success at one point in your life was not needing to stand on this to brush your teeth at the sink. Like, you grew up. You marked a new line on the wall and the door frame, right? I mean, there's a measure of success here. When the sink is not here when you're standing up and you're like, I don't need this anymore. Like, there's just a measure of success that we define from very early ages. But then we start getting older and they start changing. Now the measure of success has to do with, do people like me? Do I have the right stuff? Am I wearing the right clothes? And we just go on and do I have the right image on social media? And so we constantly have these different ladders, and not only do we have different ladders, but as we get older, they keep getting bigger because we keep convincing ourselves that we have to go higher and higher up the ladder. No, it's not just this house, now it's this house. My son, they just moved into, he got a one-room apartment. He started off, he's like, Dad, I think we're gonna get two. Two what? 2 rooms. Why? Well, in case people come to visit. Well, how much more a month is that? It's like $550 a month more. I'm like, well, son, that's called dumb. You don't need to do that. If I come visit, for one, you live 20 minutes away, I'm going home. But if in some freak reason I have to stay the night, you can sleep on the couch and I'll take your bed. Like, I don't need another room. He's like, well, what if? I'm like, stop the what if. What if you're broke? Like, don't do that, right? But eventually, he's not gonna want a 1-bedroom apartment. He's gonna want 2. Or he's gonna want a house. And then he's gonna want a bigger house. You get the idea? And here's part of what I want to hear. I don't think, if you're hearing right now, oh boy, this is gonna be a message about criticizing the fact that we wanna get stuff, we wanna acquire things. No. As a matter of fact, C.S. Lewis, famous theologian, listen to what he once said. There's a quote on your screen. I think sometimes we don't set our sights high enough. I think we actually, in fact, set them too low. Do we have the quote? It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted, creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slums because he can't imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. See, I don't want us to live a life that's depressing and you give everything up and you're just walking around with a chip on your shoulder because you have nothing. I actually want us to set our sights higher. I want us to climb the right ladder. The ladder where we're gonna truly find success. Problem is, even with the world that gave us the opportunity to reframe things, this is what we keep doing. We just keep going up the wrong ladders. And the problem is every time you go up a rung, what's the message? Okay, I got here, I'm gonna advance in my career. Now what's the message? You gotta advance more. I'm gonna get a certain amount of income in the bank. and streaming in from month to month, and you hit it. And then what? I need more. It's a law of diminishing returns. I got the iPhone 5. And then what? I need the iPhone 25. It just keeps going and going. You know, maybe one of the pinnacle pictures of all of this is Hollywood. Is there an industry that in many ways has everything more than this? You have fame, you have acknowledgement, you have attention, you have all the pleasures that this world offers. You have money. Think of Johnny Depp, who earned $650 million making films. Jim Carrey was asked at the Golden Globe Awards to hand out an award recently. I don't know if you saw what he did when he handed out that award, a little snippet on the screen of what he said. And you have to imagine him in his voice. He was very sarcastic as he said this. But in handing out the award, I am two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey. You know, when I go to sleep at night, I'm not just going to sleep. I am two-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey going to get some well-needed shut-eye. And when I dream, I don't just dream any old dream. No, sir. I dream about being three-time Golden Globe winning actor, and this is where he shifted everything in the room. Because then it would be enough. I would be enough. It would finally be true. And I could stop this terrible search for what I know ultimately won't fulfill me. Here he is. And his admission to a room of people that are standing on similar ladders is, let's be honest, we've climbed it, we've gotten it, and it just really doesn't matter. But this is how we measure so much in our lives, is what we can get by going up those ladders. And here's the thing. One of the interesting things about climbing the ladder is, it doesn't matter how high you get. Like right now, if measure is on the ladder, I'm more successful than all of you at this moment. But you know what's true about the ladder? There's always somebody that can go higher. Always. You go, Lucas. I don't know how high he's going. The funny thing about ladders, too, is that they're unstable. You can get up there, and somebody can knock it out from underneath you. It's more than just the fact that you can get to the top and find out it doesn't satisfy. They're not even stable to climb. So what do we do to measure success? In the Bible, there is an account of a man that probably many of you know of, but his name is Solomon. He is recorded as one of the most successful kings of all of ancient Israel. Interestingly, though, his beginning pursuit of his kingship was not to be successful. It was not to acquire wealth. It was not to acquire fame. His beginning pursuit was wisdom. The book of 1 Kings records it this way. I want you to hear it. 1 Kings, God actually literally comes to Samuel and asks him what it is that he wants as he's becoming king. And of all the things that he could have requested, he didn't request wealth, he didn't request status, he didn't request all the things he could have. He requested one thing, and it was wisdom. And this was God's response for his request. And so God said to him, since you have asked this thing, and you have asked this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. And I will give you a wise and a discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor ever will there be again. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience with me and keep my decrees and my commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life. So God shows up to this man, Solomon, and says, what do you want to become king? And he says, I want a wise and discerning heart. And God says, you've got it. And because that's what you asked for instead of everything else, I'm also going to give you everything else. And he did. Like, he had everything. I mean, he was not just wise. Like, people would come from other regions and other countries for his discernment and his input. Other kings and queens would come to him for his just discernment in situations they had to deal with, but also how he would administer justice in situations, trials. He ruled over his own people. Like, he was just known for being incredibly wise. There are, at least in the Bible, over 1,000 sayings of his of wisdom. There are other records outside the Bible of his wisdom and his sayings. Like, he became incredibly wise, and people sought him from all around the globe for it. In terms of wealth, there was no one that was wealthier. Matter of fact, there is one thing in all of the kingdom under his reign that Israel is known to have a shortage of, and it was trees. Because so much wood had to be harvested to build the wheelbarrows that would transport his finances, his gold, his jewels, that they literally ran short on trees. Like, he had no lack of anything. He had everything that he wanted. He had also projects. It wasn't just wisdom, it wasn't just wealth. He undertook some of the projects that even today architects marvel at, not the least of which is the first temple built in Jerusalem. Like, this man accomplished unbelievable feats, unbelievable projects. He's also known, if you know his story, for having 700 wives and 300 concubines. So I think it's safe to say that he was also, probably in the ancient world, one of the most sex-driven men. And that, by the way, that was not one of the promises of God. He added that one to the list. God did not promise that one to him. But here's the point. This is a man who climbed more ladders and climbed them higher than anyone before him ever had, and most of us since. And at the end of all of it, he has a very clear conclusion that he records in the book of the Bible called Ecclesiastes. So at the end of him going up more ladders than you and I ever will, higher than you and I ever will, Ecclesiastes chapter 1 records what he has to say about all of it. If you've got your Bible, flip there. If not, on your screen. Chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Ready? Say it. Meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Now, just so you know, most of the rest of this book, as he does lay down truth, it does read a little bit like a 1990s emo band. A little dark, a little depressing, a little cynical. But what he's attempting to do is show, I've climbed the ladders, I've climbed more of them than you, I've climbed them higher than you. Let me tell you what the result is before you waste your life trying to define success going up them. Meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all of their labor at which they toil under the sun? That phrase is going to become important, so lock that into your minds. Under the sun. Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets, and it hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, and yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they never return. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. And what has been will be again. And what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. Now, some versions take the word meaningless from the Hebrew language and translate it into the word frustrating. So even if you wouldn't go so far this morning to say life is meaningless, I think we can all agree that in the pursuit of trying to find success and measuring your life as quote unquote successful can be a very frustrating experience, yes? Solomon would say, if your measure of success is living for everything you can find under the sun, meaningless. And here's why it's meaningless. For the reasons that you already know, but he continues to highlight and exaggerate throughout the book. The reason that it's meaningless is because the lie of the rungs of this ladder, which tell you if you just get to the next one, then finally you'll feel a sense of self-worth, of satisfaction, of having arrived, of peace, of comfort, of whatever it is that you're looking for. This is why it's meaningless, because the ladder lies. And because the lie is just get to the next rung. And then you get there, and the lie is, nope, the next rung. And then you get there, and the lie is, no, the next rung. And too many people are still living their lives trying to climb up that ladder, believing that finally, hopefully, eventually, that next run is going to give them what they need. As you read through the rest of the book, this is the pursuit of Solomon. He's going to lay out every ladder he can find in this world, everything under the sun that this world offers. He lines up all the ladders, and he starts climbing. and he reaches the peak of them, and then comes back to tell everybody, here's the message. This world is full of a lot of ladders that don't matter. This goes right back to what Chan said at the opening quote. You and I have the possibility of living our lives. Don't worry about even just failure, but succeeding at what doesn't matter. And so Solomon's message is, there are some things that we pursue that don't matter. And here's what's ironic. Some of us, even though you have been a Christian for a long time, even though maybe this is a story that you have become vastly familiar with, like myself, how many of us are still failing to learn from the lessons of our ancestors and still find ourselves going up that ladder? So I wanted to find a couple of the ones that Solomon really highlights that were his pursuit, because I think they're ones that we continue to pursue as well. The first one I just want to call this, it's the ladder of money. The ladder of money. So I don't know about you, but my dad growing up, one of the things that was a status symbol for him was he had a rocker. And that rocker, that was his chair. Like nobody sat in it but Dad. And if you got caught sitting in it and he wanted to get in it, you get out of the chair. Like the chair was it was like his throne. As any king has, they have a throne. Well, Solomon had a throne as well. And he didn't just have a throne, he had a throne of thrones. It symbolized his power, it symbolized his status, it symbolized his wealth. It was built high in elevation, so it sat above everybody. You had to look up when you saw him. He had to look down when he saw you. There were 6 steps to get up to it. On every step, there was a lion and an eagle, golden, that faced each other. As a matter of fact, I want to read to you the description of his throne. This is ridiculous, but this was the throne of Solomon. There were mechanical tricks that allowed that whenever the king reached the first step, the ox would stretch forth its leg on which Solomon leaned. A similar action would take place in the case of all of the animals on each of the 6 steps. From the 6th step, the eagle raised the king and placed him on his seat, near which a golden serpent then lay coiled up. When the king was seated, the large eagle placed the crown on his head. The serpent then uncoiled itself, and the lions and the eagles moved upward to form a shade over him. Where are we at? When the king sat, surrounded by the Sanhedrin to judge the people, the wheels began to turn, and the beasts and the fowls began to utter their respective cries, which frightened those who intended to bear false witness to the king. Moreover, while Solomon was ascending the throne, the lions scattered all kinds of fragrant spices. That's just where he sat for dinner. Now, I'm just going to suggest, if you have a custom lazy boy made of gold that when you sit down sprays incense into the air and it growls at your children when they lie at you, you have money to waste. This was Solomon. Dude had money on top of money on top of money. And here was his conclusion about all the wealth that he had gained. Chapter 5, he says this on your screens. Now, if you're in an NIV, this is the NLT version, so it may read a little different, but this is what he says. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, so do those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to feast their eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owners, or wealth lost through some misfortune, so that when they have children, there is nothing left for them to inherit. Everyone comes naked into this world, and that's also the way that we leave. I mean, this is a guy that did have it all. And I love what he says. He's very clear. The problem with it partly is that the more you get, the more you want. You know, Johnny Depp not only earned, you know this probably, he not only earned $650 million, he also lost $650 million. Like how many of you, if I was to say, hey, $650 million, do you want it? You'd be like, it would change my life forever. No, it wouldn't. It didn't for Johnny. As a matter of fact, there was a poll conducted a number of years ago on people and their earnings. It ranged from $12,000 a year to $120,000 a year, and it was one question asked of all the people along the spectrum. How much more do you need to earn to alleviate whatever current financial stress and pressure you're under? Here's what's really interesting. Though everybody answered with a different amount, almost every single person answered with the same percent. To the $12,000 a year, they wanted $1,200. To the $120,000 a year, they wanted $12,000. It was a 10% along the entire spectrum. And here's what I think is fascinating, and here's why I think that's interesting. Because nobody said, I want to go from here to here. They say, I want to go from here to here. I just want to go up the next rung. And if I just get to the next rung. But what did the people at the next rung say? I just want the next rung. And what did the people at this rung say? I just want the next rung. Solomon's message is there's no end to the rungs. And you'll continue to climb, and you'll continue to find that this, like everything else, is meaningless. The other thing that I think Solomon learned as he climbed another ladder, we'll call it this one, it's the ladder of achievement. Ladder of achievement. It's the, if I just do this, if I just accomplish this, then. It's the this-then dilemma. If I just accomplish this, build this, get known for this, have a reputation for this, my portfolio says this, then I'll feel accomplished. Then I'll feel a sense of self-worth. Well, here's what Solomon said because he did all of that. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. He says, verse 4, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves, flourishing the trees. And yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained. Say the phrase. You're starting to see that emerge, right? There's a couple times. So I'm saying, pay attention to this. This is going to continue to have importance for us. But Solomon says, of everything I did and everything I achieved and everything I built and all the stuff that even then he wouldn't know, we would know about in 2023, he says, none of it mattered if that was my pursuit of feeling worthwhile, accomplished, successful, and validated in my existence. It didn't work for me. This is why we always hear stories. The really sad, sobering stories of life of the athlete or the politician or the rock star or the movie star. You fill in the blank name and title who achieved it all, got it all, climbed the ladder, and then took their own life. Because it didn't satisfy. And yet we still find ourselves going, yeah, but if I don't need all that. I just need the next rung. That's all I need. I don't need to be movie star famous. I just want the next rung. I just want that 10% more of whatever it is. And then the last ladder, we'll just call this the ladder of pleasure and image. The ladder of pleasure and image. Here's what Solomon said about his pursuit of pleasure and image. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried it all in folly. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. So this is a guy that looked at everything the world had to offer when it comes to pleasure, enjoyment, personal gratification. He tried it all. Drink, women, whatever he could get his hands on, whatever he said, he's very clear. Whatever I set my eyes on, I did not deny myself. And in the end, it was folly. In the end, it did nothing. As a matter of fact, I would suggest it probably brought a tremendous amount of heartache and brokenness, maybe even more than any other ladder he climbed. And yet here we are still. All these generations later, all these years later, with the wisdom passed down from actually being on and climbing up the ladders and still believing ourselves today that if we're just known enough, maybe if we just have enough we just get to the right vacation, we got to have the right house in the right place, if we just explore everything sexually, and we are now caught up still as much as ever before in the idea that acknowledgement, image, pleasure is still going to lead to a certain sense of satisfaction. And Solomon says, well, I got it all, and it didn't. Do you know, as a matter of fact, interestingly enough, I think that with the idea of image, I think that this one uniquely affects us as Americans maybe more than most of the rest of the world. You go, well, how so? Well, there was a study conducted recently with adolescents in China and in America with one question asked. What do you dream of becoming when you grow up? The study was conducted by Lego. Lego's trying to figure out what new toys to build for kids. And so they want to know, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you know that the number one answer in China was an astronaut? The number one answer from the same demographic of adolescents in the United States was a social media influencer. There is something that has happened in the human heart, so hear me on this, in the human heart set apart from God that leads us to be self-absorbed. But we have learned in America how to pour gasoline on that fire. And we are training up an entire generation, and you and I are a part of it, of people who are self-absorbed and portraying images that aren't really who we are. How often do we post the bad days? How often do we share the stories online of the failed parenting moments? We know this, right? I don't need to harp on this. We have a problem with wanting to portray the right image to everybody around us. And if we have the right image and they see us in the right moment, and they see me having the right moment with my kid, or they see me on the right beach in the right pose, or whatever it is, then there's a certain sense of satisfaction, and it's empty, and it's just one more rung on another ladder. And Solomon says it takes you nowhere. Truth is, we could go ladder after ladder after ladder. We could define 15 other ladders right now, and they would all lead to the same place. Just believing that we need to get a little bit higher or get another ladder. But I do think in the start, Solomon drops some incredible truth right off of the bat. Listen to what he says again. Verse 3. I had you kind of flag it in your mind. Verse 3 of chapter 1. What do people gain from their labor at which they toil under the sun? So here's the truth. And I think it's the essence of all of Solomon's writing in Ecclesiastes. If our lives are lived for the accomplishments alone of what's under the sun, so temporal success, and primarily to the benefit of ourselves, that's a life, he says, is meaningless. That's a life full of nothing but frustration. So what's the key? I think the key is to actually set our sights even higher than just the ladder. If Solomon says everything under the sun, if that's what you're living for, is frustrating and meaningless, then here's what we do. We set our sights above the sun. We live for what's above the sun. What does that mean? We live with an idea that this world is not all there is. It does not terminate on itself. There is a longer, bigger, realer, truer existence beyond this world that we don't usually often think of. And even as those of us that are followers of Jesus, heaven, eternity, just becomes that's what happens later on in the future and does not bear influence on how we make decisions here and now. Solomon says we cannot just live for what's under the sun. As a matter of fact, verse 11 of chapter 3, he says it incredibly clear. For God has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has also then set eternity in the human heart. And yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I think what Solomon would have us understand is that a life lived to better redefine and reframe what success is a life lived not just for the temporal here and now, not just lived for yourself, but lived in light of eternity. Now, we can get lost in that sometimes. I mean, all of Easter was even built kind of around this, not to be the people who are just stuck always looking up into the sky, thinking about forever, ever, ever after. But here's just a reality. If you understand eternity appropriately, it becomes the lens over how you make decisions here and now. Matter of fact, let me give you one more quote from C.S. Lewis. I think it's a beautiful one about how those who've had the most impact have done so by thinking about eternity. This is what Lewis says. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did the most for the present were precisely the ones that thought the most of the next. When you realize this isn't all there is more. And most of what you and I live for to define as success, here's the brutal reality. Not only does it not go with us, no, it is the future stuff of landfills. And yet it's become the primary pursuit of most of our lives. And so how do we live for things under the sun? Well, we live for things under the sun by trying to get up these ladders. How do we live for things over the sun, above the sun? By realizing this isn't all there is, and you begin to reframe all of your decisions. So let me give you just a couple of questions that can help do that, because this whole series is going to really be trying to reframe the idea of success and how we measure it. But I want to start off today by just leaving you with a few questions. Our band's going to come out in a second. And these are questions that I hope will help us in any given moment of any given decision to reframe how it is that we're defining success, to even then reorient us more towards laying the lenses of eternity on what we're doing instead of just living for the temptation of the temporal. So here's question number one. They're going to be on your screen, so I'd encourage you to take some pictures. Number one is a question of purpose. The question is just simply, what am I doing this for? Whatever this is, whatever ladder you're on, whatever the pursuit is, and it's we're not thinking like bad stuff, broken stuff, disparaging stuff. Like think about whatever it is. How do I do this for a better purpose? And you ask, what am I doing it for then? So whether it's taking your kids to soccer, whether it's a request you're meeting of somebody that say, hey, can you help me out with this? Whether it's a pursuit, whether it's a purchase, whether you fill in the blank, whether it's a personal hobby, what am I doing this for? Because if at the end, and you'll only know this in the deep parts of your own soul, if at the end what you're doing it for is for a greater sense of personal worth, personal satisfaction, that people will notice and affirm you, then that's living under the sun. That's the stuff of ladders. The second question is a question of person, and it's who am I doing it for? One of the things that Solomon makes very clear is that your life, if it's only lived to the pursuit of what you gain mostly, what you get, and you throw here and there the scraps of how you can serve other people, but your life is mostly about you, not only is that empty, not only is that frustrating, not only is that meaningless, it is the antithesis of Jesus, who as followers of his, he says, you want to live like me? Give your life away. Give your life away. Lay it down. But everything about our culture lies to us on a daily basis and says, no. A life worth living is a life where you take care of numero uno first. And Jesus flipped that and said, no. Your decisions have to be, who am I doing this for? And if you find that most of your decisions are me, then the end of that is going to be an upscale on the ladder of meaninglessness. Last one is this. It's a question of persistence. So what do I do with my frustrations? And this is the one that you pose to God. Because some of you might be thinking this even now, and you might think it throughout the series at some point. I don't feel like I have a life that feels very successful. Matter of fact, I feel like I'm in some very frustrating seasons and moments in my own life. One of the promises in chapter 3, verse 11, when Solomon wrote that God puts eternity on the hearts of men, is he said, he also makes everything beautiful in its time. And I'm thinking of some people right now that I know that there are some deeply broken, frustrating moments in their life that aren't necessarily the result of them trying to climb the ladder. It's just the result of this broken world that doesn't function yet the way God intended. Can you hold out in trust that he makes everything beautiful in its time? Even if you would go, man, I tried the ladder and the ladder collapsed. I've lost a lot in the last couple years. I don't have anything that feels like success right now. He makes everything beautiful in its time. The question there is, God, what do I do in my present moment of frustration? We're going to end with communion this morning. And part of the reason I think we need to is I think of the words of the Apostle Paul about Jesus, who once said it was for the joy that was set before him that he endured the cross and scorned its shame. Do you realize even as Jesus went to the cross, that part of what gave him the ability to endure that present moment was a focus on the future moment? For the joy that was set before him, that's an eternal moment. And his focus on the eternal moment gave him perspective in the present moment. This is why eternity is so important. Eternity isn't disconnect from reality. Eternity isn't just, I'm just going to be absent-minded and only think about heaven. Eternity what gives you the perspective to know how to inform your decisions in the moment. So for the joy set before him, he endured the moment of the cross. So this morning, here's how we do communion if this is new for you. We have stations all around the room, and our band is going to lead us in a couple of moments of worship and music. And I would just encourage you, when you're ready, to come up to the table. But don't just go through the motions and run up here or run to the back wherever you're going to go. But take a moment and maybe even just ask God to speak into some of those questions right now. And have a moment with him. But most of all in the moment, I hope that your heart will celebrate the fact that for the joy that was set before him, you are that joy. He endured the cross, scorned its shame, allowed his body ripped, broken, beaten, and destroyed for the joy that you on the other side of that would know him and him you. So God, I pray this morning that as we come and we celebrate communion, there would be just a supernatural awareness in our presence of your sacrifice for us, of your hope for us, and of your life offered to us. May you help us measure success different. Amen.
Before the Lord, let this be my confession. My wealth is in the cross. My wealth is in the cross. There's nothing more I want than just to know His love. My
you guys stand as we continue to worship today?
Saw you looking for me over there, weren't you? Yeah. Hey, we've got a prayer team that part of their responsibility, their passion for being here is to love on you before you go back into all that is your week. So if there's anything stirring in you that even has nothing to do with today, but you just need somebody to process with, there's going to be some up front and some at the table in the lobby. So let us just serve you that way. Otherwise, thanks for being with us. Next week, we're going to look at what it means to live in the moment that God gives us and not just to the present. So we're going to flip the script a little bit. See you next Sunday.
Right?
What a powerful service.
Really powerful service, right?
One of the things I think about regarding success, Kim, is the inexhaustible joy that comes from knowing that we are children of the King.
Ooh, it's good.
As an establishing principle for how we look at ourselves and other people in life itself. So,
right.
What a new measure of success we have today.
100%.
I'm so thankful.
And I think the visual for so many people, at least for me, was just
gosh.
like, oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
so convicted by that,
It's
right?
so
You know what I mean?
true.
And I was like, okay, so what's that step for me? And what was that step? And what is the Lord saying? And where does he want me to really point things? You know what I mean? It was so good.
One of the things that I think about, I don't know if you folks at home think about this too, is when I'm thinking about, say, money, how much more is enough? I think about it this way too. When Craig was talking, I thought, oh, whatever amount replaces my trust in the Lord.
In the Lord. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, powerful day. I'm going to have to go back and take another listen because I don't know that I caught every nugget. But hey, we were so glad you were with us. Hope you were able to
super
participate
thankful.
in communion
Yes.
as a family at home with your, however that looked for you. I love that.
Yeah.
So join us again next week. It's going to be a great week again next week.
Week 2 hits the next week. Join us. Don't
Week
miss.
2.
Have
Have
a
an
great
awesome week, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
life.